New Pope, who dis?
Welcome back to the officially unofficial podcast for The New Pope on HBO. I'm your host, A.Ron.
And I'm Cecily.
Our other co-host, Jim, has fallen into a coma.
It happens, it turns out. He just had a heart attack. I thought he was perfectly healthy.
It's very sad. It's very unexpected. We hear that every 9th podcast, he lets out a groan or a sigh. So definitely have your headphones on and be listening for that throughout the rest of these podcasts.
Subscribe, hit that subscribe button to hear him breathe.
It's like Tinkerbell. Enough likes and subscribes, maybe he comes out of the coma. What did you think of this, the 5th episode of The New Pope, Cecily?
I liked it. I'm feeling very nervous, but really excited at the same time. I'm nervous about where this relationship with Sophia and JP3 is going because I desperately want it to happen, but it can't.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous. And
kind of like Lenny and Esther last season. It's like a will they, won't they, but like,
Yeah, except I want this to happen, but it shouldn't. And before I didn't want it to happen, but it was most likely going to.
Yeah.
But I'm also super excited because I feel very strongly we're going to get a miracle Lenny in about, well, we did some math we'll talk about later, but hopefully by the end of the season. There's no way we don't get more, I think.
Yeah. I thought he's already a pretty big part of this season. And now you've got this papal countdown of his breathing and his sighing. It does seem like that we are going to get some form of the Pope return, the young Pope returning. We'll have to see. I want to talk more about that later. I enjoyed this episode a lot too. I have been content to just kind of watch this season unfold. And I think now, we talked about this last episode too, that like I kind of in the early goings of the young Pope, I was very enamored with Jude Law's performance and all the weird stuff and like the kind of the strange goings on at the Vatican to an outsider. Mm-hmm. But it's like, what is the point? What's he actually going to try to do? And it didn't get until about this episode that things started making sense on that show. And I feel like that now Sir John is starting to assert what he wants his papacy to be about. And he's kind of discovered his passion issue and also things that he's naturally good at, like providing these symbols, shouting no. And this episode continues to be gorgeous. It gave us a nice reminder of why, despite being such an arch fucking bastard, I can't hate Viello. That scene where he brought the old Don Guillermo. Don Mimo and Guillermo together.
It
beautiful.
It makes you forget that he's such a shithead all the time. And most of his shit is kind of forgivable. There's a lot of unforgivable sins.
No, he kills people. He does a lot of bad shit.
Yeah.
But he also brings together these beings that seem to be wholly simpatico. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful moment. It makes everyone smile.
It made me smile.
How about we jump right into the episode here?
Yeah.
Let's start where the episode does, with a papal visit to John Paul III by Sharon Stone, where she is forbidden to unleash her two greatest weapons, left leg and right leg, and the crossing and uncrossing of the same.
It was really funny. I feel like sometimes these bits, like the John Malkovich is one of my favorite people bit, and Sharon Stone's legs is like, it feels like it could be too much, too cute, but I think it works when you just really go for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension in that scene because Sharon Stone is hitting him pretty hard about the acceptance of gay people by the church. Mm-hmm. And he does the John Malkovich thing where he kind of pirouettes around it and says, I'm just not something like that's going to require a bold pope, a brave and resolute pope, and that's not me. Of course, later in the episode, he announces that he tells Sophia in confidence that that's exactly what I'm going to do. But they talk about how he feels like he's missed his own life, and she says you should have children to fix that, and he's like, haha, I can't.
Yeah, what a thing to say.
Yeah.
I was surprised to learn that she's got an almost genius level IQ.
I was surprised to find a lot of things about Sharon Stone. Number one, the woman is 61 years old.
Whoa.
I was thinking 50 or so. Mm-hmm. And she has 3 children.
Oh, okay.
I would have sworn that she was kind of like who's the British lady that.
Oh, like a Kathleen Turner type is what I was thinking.
Oh no, I was thinking of
who also may have children.
Yeah, before I read that, I thought she's kind of maybe a Helen Mirren type, that she looks very well preserved because she's never, subjected her body to the ravages of childbirth. But she looks amazing, and she's very disarming. I like how the Pope had this synchronized turn everyone's heads while she was crossing her legs when her legs started to fall asleep.
And they were all kind of giggling in the back, like this was just to put on for her, maybe. But her trying to take her shoes off without uncrossing her legs.
That was very funny. And then at the end, where he's talking about, hey, we've all survived this and we've all made the sacrifice, and she kind of like sensuously rubs her legs up and down without uncrossing them, like pretty good.
Yeah.
But he's got this point about like, and this is what I find a lot of Christians to various levels of success retreat to when they're really pinned on, issues like the Bible and it being outdated, and the fact that like it seems like there's been a lot of stuff that's been updated, like the Pope embraced evolution within my lifetime, and yet there's still like this gulf between the divine and the sinful human, and we're just bridging that one step at a time. It just is fun. It just always seems like that God's taking a step towards us rather than we take a step towards him with the way these corrections and these updates go.
Right. And I think that with him even changing his mind in this episode, which he does a lot, I think it's a really human thing to do, to admit a type of weakness, and that is to be wrong and to be able to change your opinion about something when presented with better information. I think people, especially the church, thinks that, or even, like the United States government, sticking to these really antiquated rules that have been written and aren't updating with the times is not a source of strength, because things change. Yeah. And I think that's an okay thing.
Yeah, it's weird because like there's some things that are like patch notes, like and this version of Christianity, or this version of relationship with God, the prohibition against eating shellfish is removed because humans have invented cooking. And then this patch notes are like
you don't have to flay yourself anymore.
yeah. God in denial. He created homosexuals. Patch notes read, my bad, and everything's cool now. It's just very interesting, I think.
Right.
The other point that she made is, because he's like, well, I can't help you out, the gay people. What else you got, Sharon? And she's like, we're surrounded here by all this high medieval art that was commissioned at great cost by the church. Why don't you support artists today? Which I don't know that that's literally true, because they mentioned some big commercial art installment that one Pope commissioned that kind of flopped. But as far as it is true, it's like, I guess, yeah, why doesn't the Catholic Church commission more
modern art? Not even
more
modern style, but
theological or Christian art, for lack of a better term. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting. Let's talk about terrorism.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like he is going to do a little bit more work updating the church than we thought the young Pope would.
Well, yeah, the young Pope wanted to retreat back into the aforementioned high medieval times.
Right.
Let's talk about terrorism, which has been a subtextual threat throughout the series, but it becomes an actual threat in this episode, where we find that in Lourdes, France, 10 victims were, I assume, gunned down. The way the victims were essentially staged along this river. I don't think that was the actual victims, or how you're supposed to understand that this is just kind of all symbolic of the people lost.
Right. They killed 10 priests and nuns.
Was that it? Because I didn't. There were people in wheelchairs, and I wasn't sure.
They were all just religious servants. I know that much.
Okay. But you actually had the terror attack. We see Voiello and Bauer talking about it, and Bauer's opinion was that actually this terror attack is good, because before you guys were predators of children, now you're victims of heinous, reprehensible violence, and you're inherently more sympathetic, and this has taken the eye off of that. Voiello kind of worries about this new alliance that Thomas and Spazella, is that his name? Spalletta have forged, and Bauer's like, well, why don't you just let the Pope twist in the wind and take the fall? And here again, Voiello's firm center is a love for the church and what damage it would do to let a pope like that twist in the wind.
Yet another one.
But he also will kill a pope. So
right. I mean, you can tell that Voyello's interest is definitely in the pope succeeding, whoever it is.
I guess, I guess the difference is that he doesn't mind killing a pope as a man, but he doesn't want to harm the institution and office. Like, he has great respect for that, whereas the men are dispensable,
right,
or expendable. Did you know that this movie that they're watching, this caca movie, my research, I'm not certain. I'm taking a Redditor's fact at face value because I couldn't. The sources were all in Italian. That this is an outtake from the 2018 movie Loro.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely they spent enough time on the film itself that you could tell that, one, it was Sorrentino's work.
Yeah, this is a film by Paolo Sorrentino, for sure.
I was thinking maybe they just filmed something like that just to have this movie theater scene, like a picture-in-picture thing.
Like Noah Hawley's done that in Fargo a couple times, like done a in-universe work that doesn't actually exist. It's just something for the universe itself. But
yeah, I mean, did you know that Quentin Tarantino in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie wrote 5 episodes of whatever made-up TV show was in there?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I love it when directors do this, but this is like this is an actual movie, I think. But if you haven't seen the trailer for Loro, go check it out because it's bananas and apparently true-ish.
Yeah, it's based on the life of this media tycoon and politician Silvio Berlusconi, which I've heard of. And this movie is now rocketed to the top of my must-see list just because of how amazing it looks and sounds. But it's about this guy has been the prime minister of Italy over 4 times. He's the longest-serving prime minister of post-war Italy. Is currently one of the representatives for Italy in the EU Parliament.
Still?
Despite, currently serving, despite many scandals involving tax evasion, abuse of power, bribery of senators, and at least one case of soliciting a minor for sex. Like, this guy seems like he's bulletproof, or if he's not bulletproof, he's like a Wolverine where he just recovers quickly from the wounds. I can't wait to see it. Like, again, the trailer looks insane. Anyway, the other thing about the terrorism plot is that there's a lot of pressure for him to make a statement, because this is a shot aimed right at the heart of the church. And he tries to find the right words, and the right word is no. No. You had an interesting take, which I fully agree with, that when do you think he came up with that no?
I think it was in the moments when he was getting ready on the shores in that chair with just 2 people holding a sheet in front of him so no one could see, and he's putting on the makeup, and the nun that attends to popes offers him mascara, and he says no. And that's stuck as a brainworm. I was really interested to know what he had before no.
Yeah.
But I think that's where he came up with it.
Yeah, I wonder. What do you think the no meant? Because to me, it read like an adult walking into a room full of children and just asserting like raw authority, just like no, do not, and it's like it's addressed to the terrorists. It's addressed to the people that are probably getting very emotionally overwrought about what we should do with the terrorists. It's aimed at the people trying to politicize probably the tragedy for their own ends. Like, it's wonderfully effective, I thought.
I think both things. I think what you said is true, but I also smacks a little bit of Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign. Or, people advising like women or children who are being abused to just say no. And that's not as effective when you've been in those situations. But I want to believe the better part. But I couldn't help but think that kind of like no abstinence idea is not effective.
It's a big hit. It seemed like it really took the public by storm. Now massive crowds are turning out to see him. He's able to kiss some babies and raise them on high. Little bit of nervous flashback to last season where Lenny just straight up drops a baby, albeit 18 inches onto a soft hospital bed.
But
still, like, I'm thinking, like, new Pope just gonna choke slam him up from, like,
I thought the baby was gonna like spit up on him or something.
Gonna spike him like a football, right on the soft spot.
Oh, that baby was cute, and he was really chewing the scenery in those.
Right.
shots.
But some of this reminds me so much of, like, the movie Evita, where it's like every single time a PR success is, you've got all the people in back like, okay, now what are we going to do with it though?
Yeah.
The Pope John, the Paul III is kind of basking in this relevance and this authority, and now it's like Vielo's in his ear, like, okay, now how are we going to translate this to action? And it seems like his other advisors are like, well, that's not the Pope's job. The Pope's there to be a moral symbol, and everybody else assigns a meaning. But I think he realizes that I got to get out there and do something. And there's this interview with whoever this Times author. I think it's fictitious. You said that you couldn't find out evidence of them being a real person. But this reminds
Emery Kitsworth. Yeah.
This seems like the same kind of tension that like Lenny kept on putting off his first public appearance, kept putting off because he's waiting for the right time. This new Pope, who is the fascination with him is not his youth and beauty and just seeing him, his fascination is his dazzling intellect. Like he's waiting to display that. Like his public appearances so far have been short, matter of fact, sometimes very short in the case of no. Say 8 no's and you're done.
But it seems like his plan is to make a splash.
Yeah. Which she's going to have to by the end because Pope Pius XIII is making quite the splash, completely supine on his back. There's also, before we move on to some other topic, I want to talk about this thing with Adam. Last week we saw him skiing in gravel. This week he turns down his brother John for a joyride in favor of writing. And
you can see on his desk that there's a glass box with God inside.
Yeah.
This is it a millipede, centipede?
It's a millipede. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we see that same millipede come out of the silver box on his bedside table
as he's passing out from, again, probably a medicated, some kind of drug medication.
Yeah, and there's this idea that occurred to me in this scene, and I'm not sure what good it would do, but is there any possibility that John and Adam switched places?
I saw like an episode or two ago someone float that idea in one of the forums I was reading, and I thought of the same thing I do right now, which is I can see the appeal, and God knows people love a fucking mystery box. And here you've got a literal mystery box, and people love identity swaps and hidden identities. But I'm like, what is the payoff there? Like, what is the payoff of a man for 40 years pretending to be his brother? Despite parental affection, but I don't know. It does fit the themes where he's, that's the total abnegation of yourself, right? It's a total rejection of oneself to make your parents happy. But if you're going to pretend to be the son, maybe you pretend to be the good son. Or maybe it's it's the good son, and the John died, and he took his place as a flagellation of himself for that. I don't know.
Maybe he just didn't want the pressure that his parents are putting on him anymore.
It's got to be super fucking interesting if they're going to go that way, because otherwise it just feels like a stunt. And this show, as much as it does a bunch of splashy art stunts, doesn't usually do stunts for stunt's sake. And it's not art, like have a reveal that, oh, I'm actually your long lost brother. I don't know. It's an interesting idea, but I definitely see like there's a little bit of support, and I could see some areas where that could be interesting, but I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Sophia.
Yeah, let's talk about Sophia.
What's going on with Sophia and her husband Tomas? Because I thought they were solid snake for each other.
I think they are. I feel like I'm getting the impression that he's working some other kind of backroom deals without her. And she's also at the same time has this growing attraction to John Paul III. So now Thomas's plan to join the inner sanctum, which we know he said, I have some things to pitch to John Paul, but I don't know how she feels about him working with her now, because it's definitely going to stifle a little bit of that attraction that she's feeling, or the closeness that they're having if he starts coming around. But also he's doing some things like doing all the blow in that
Yeah,
through
that
the
seemed to
glory
bother
hole.
her looking at that through the the intimacy hole.
Yeah, she's like feeling this separation from him through that hole.
Because isn't
And
she supposed to be seducing the Pope? I thought that was like her stated goal, is that, like, you know, wrap him around her little fingers so that he's pliable.
I think so, but I don't think they
It's not.
anticipated.
You're not supposed to actually fall for him. It's that
Right,
old chestnut.
it's a classic.
Okay. So Tomas goes off to take a sordid informal meeting, which I thought that maybe this was just their code word for they have a somewhat open relationship. Perhaps we haven't seen evidence of that, and he's just going to do that thing.
Well, you can see where last time they were talking about, oh, come back with the Pope and the explicit plans, but now he's going off for an informal meeting, and she's staying home and making phone calls to a private apartment.
Yeah.
She's
making night calls to see if the Pope is real.
In her pajamas, and you can tell that there's just that difference.
Yeah, and she's like genuinely, she seemed like a schoolgirl calling her first crush. Like there's like this kind of pins and needles.
And he was very much a
altered.
schoolboy, not answering.
They're playing games, Cecily. They're playing games with each other. They're not very good at it because they essentially announced their intentions right off the bat. But I thought it was interesting how there's this montage of like she's calling the Pope and the Pope's just letting her ring off the hook, and you kind of get around. You see a little bit of Esther. You see a little bit of this the young nun who's having this relationship in the garden shed with this immigrant boy or this refugee boy. And he finally picks up the phone and says, "Oh yeah, I was just doing that as a power move," and because I want you to like me, and she invites her to a date, which is a tour of the catacombs. Mm-hmm. He directly asks her at the tomb of Saint or not Saint, I guess. He needs some more work to be canonized. The recently dead Pope Francis II. Ask her if there's any shenanigans around her death, and she just flatly denies it.
Do you think she believes that? Why wouldn't she be honest with him in that moment? It's not like he doesn't know about Voyello's suspicious activities.
It could be that she's genuine. Like, you know what? Vielo's always kind of like a lightning rod for this kind of stuff, but I think she didn't we find out last year that she knows about the Guillermo stuff?
Maybe.
Guillermo stuff. This poor kid. He's got so many problems, and I can't even pronounce his name. I think that she's seen the tender side of him, and maybe she just flatly doesn't believe that he'd be capable. Like, yeah, he certainly is a little finger type, and he's a squirrely little bastard, and he plays the game to the bone, but he's not going to play any further than that. And I just don't think that she realized. Maybe a charity. Like, I just think that she's being charitable, because otherwise, why, by working with Viello, it seems like it's working against Thomas and what he's trying to do with Spalletta.
She and Voyello work well together, which is apparent. I like the scene, I think it was last episode, when they introduced Spalletta, and you have the three of them kind of like pitching ideas and shooting each other down.
And jockeying,
Right, the three of them jockeying against each other, and I like it when Voyello and Sophia can work together.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. They have a good rapport. I feel like it's a little bit naive of her to not believe that he's capable, and is, as we the audience know, he is capable of all of those things because he did them.
Sophia's many things. I don't think naive is one of them. So she's either ignorant or she's, for some reason, maybe I guess this is another one that she's just working against her husband, or maybe putting the brakes on it because I don't know. We'll have to see.
But she straight out asks him if he's gay or straight.
Again.
I
think this is like, she does it twice in the scene, and this is like the third time overall. And he continues to deftly, and there's one point where he has her just eating out of his hand, like she's like gagging for it. Yeah. And he does the same thing that he did to Gutierrez, where it's like right as he's fully seduced them, and they're in his palm of his hand, and he just does like a half turn pirouette, and he's out of it, and they're like left shaking and breathless because of his presence. I thought that was interesting. That does he want her, or does he want her to want him?
I think he definitely desperately wants her, but it can't happen. It shouldn't happen.
I mean,
The
this is
same
the
way
Vatican. It doesn't seem like there's any problems with Pope getting it in. But maybe that's he realizes that's the key thing that Lenny discovered is he can't give Viola anything.
That's the problem. He's trying to diagnose the sickness, and he can't be a part of it.
That's true. Yeah.
I know
You got to wear the mask and the gloves if you're going to get in there. And
sleeping with a married woman is not on the level of pedophilia, but it's
Yeah.
part of the greater.
it's all mortal sin
Mortal sins.
as far as God's concerned.
Interesting that they're not addressing the fact that there is some in between place that's not gay and not straight.
What's that?
It's a little bit of both.
A little bit about the bisexuality.
Yeah.
Well, bi erasure. It's real. I thought it also. It's smart for him to be like, yeah, I'm going to come out in favor of marriage for priests, gay marriage and straight marriage. And he's like, and I know this isn't going to fix the thing because this doesn't mean that like, well, they're gay people. And if you don't let them, they're just going to go after children. He's like, this is a separate sickness.
Right, because you can't villainize all of the gay people
Right.
and say that they're all pedophiles.
Right. So I think he's saying that like I'm diverting not these sinful or these sick urges into like gay or straight marriage. He's saying that I'm like diverting attention. Like this is I can't I'm in this stuck place where I can't condemn these priests as sinners, but I can't condone what they're doing. So this is a way to kind of like divert people's attention from the fact that, we do have sickness in our society and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's also funny how she came up with like unbidden the same illustration, the same analogy about the iPhone. And he's like, come on, Sophia.
His exact analogy. It's not something Sharon Stone said.
No, you can tell that it was something that kind of bugged him because it's a good analogy and they need the better way to communicate with this. So we'll see if Sophia's up to that challenge. Do you want to talk about Viello? I mean, we already talked about Guillermo.
Yeah.
And his retreat with Don Mimo, so they don't really explain a lot about his relationship here, but apparently this is a spiritual retreat or a sanctuary that the priests used to go to as like young men in seminary school. And he remembered this very person who's already old at the time who has a similar affliction to Guillermo. His name's Don Mimo, and even though he can't see, hear, or walk, he, lays hands on this boy, and they instantly have this simpatico relationship that's beautiful.
Yeah, Guillermo laughs, and the man cries. Don Mimo cries, and it's just so sweet.
Yeah, and it lights
the
up
nun smiles.
Yeah, it's again, it's the reason why you just can't fucking hate Viello. Thank you. I hate pronouncing his name. Let's talk about Esther. Esther, like, man, God, I feel so bad for Esther. She's in a situation where she's getting perved at by her boyfriend, her pimp, Fabiano, in full view of her son that's up there in the third floor apartment window. That's really sad and depressing. She says, I can't do this anymore. And he kind of like is disgusted or pissed at her. And then the next scene, she sees through that same window, Fabiano receiving cash from the priest. And he was promising 15 to 20,000 euros for her services.
Right. This woman's incredibly wealthy, so she can afford something like 15 to 20,000.
And she gets 1,100, 1,000 for her sex with the boy with the deformities, and 100 for her sex with the priest. And I'm actually not sure if he like took the money as like a true pimp or this woman wasn't as wealthy and he lied to Esther from the beginning just to get her to do this as a favor for this old friend, or what the hell is going on here. But this clearly crushes Esther, but gives her the funds to get an escape pod out of the situation. And in the scene of Lenny breathing, which we're about to get into, she's able to make her escape.
Seems like Lenny did not abandon her in this moment. At the same time that he's sighing, she's finding this strength to run away. It feels like him. I strongly believe that he got a great sum of money and only gave her a little bit.
Yeah.
As a way to control her, to keep her in this apartment so she has no other options, thinking that would work.
Yeah.
And, in that moment, I think she was one of the people who was listening to the breathing. Mm-hmm. Maybe that gave her the strength to leave with what she had.
Where is she going? Because I have an idea.
I don't know.
I think she's going to Venice.
Huh?
I think she's going to join the hooded idolaters, and she's going to be she might duel the redheaded chief idolater, the pray woman.
I don't know.
Because she's there. She's got the miracle baby.
Or maybe she goes to Venice to be close, but I don't think she joins those people because she's got a baby. She's got a young child who needs a home. He can't just sleep on the ground.
But the thing is that Esther's not exactly making healthy choices here. And I'm saying not what she should do. I'm saying that what I think she will do, which is go to Venice to be close to Lenny. And I think that it doesn't seem like any of these people are working and people are feeding them because they see this vigil that they're doing is worthwhile. And I think this minor Catholic celebrity who has a miracle baby by the Pope who is currently breathing and sighing, like her presence there in that square would be such that she wouldn't have to worry about feeding her child, and it doesn't seem like it's particularly cold. So,
but they're all wearing hoodies, so who could tell?
Yeah, right. Just get that baby a red fitted hoodie with Pius's face on it, and his love for the Pope will keep him warm. Let's talk about this breathing. There was almost 6 uninterrupted minutes of listening to Lenny breathe through his respirator with no dialogue. We got to see everyone who's the camera's ever hovered on for more than a half second, their long reactions to it. And it was super watchable. Like, especially the first time through, I would not have believed that it was 6 full minutes. I'm like, maybe 2 minutes or so. But like, he really gives this moment time, and it feels like an important moment. This breathing and sighing routine.
Would you say that they gave that moment time to breathe?
I would say they gave it plenty of time to breathe. I felt like they might have gotten 415 breaths in him. But the deal is, and there's this whole, before we get to this discussion of the breathing, I want to talk about some of the things like there's this breathing montage that we see. The young nun is pregnant with this refugee boy. And all the young nuns are laying their hands upon her, which is this ancient symbol of like healing and solidarity.
And Cavallo's overhearing, so everyone knows now.
Fucking Cavallo with his smile. I wasn't sure if he's like, nah, there's no way he's smiling because he's for a moment happy about this. He's happy that he can exploit something.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, I was just thinking, I've never been free enough to consider, because this young nun and her boyfriend seems like they think this is just great. This is an amazing thing. Like, we're going to have this baby in this garden shed, and I want to keep being a nun, and there's going to be some nun food, and, everything's going to be happy because we're together. I'm terrified for them.
Why do you believe they feel that way?
Because they're smiling and happy. There's not any, like, fretful, like, oh, God, what are we going to do? This is a situation. I felt like also last night I watched the movie Easy Rider for the first time.
Yeah.
As featured on the new Pope. And I felt the same thing about when I was watching them with the hippie commune. Like, oh, this is going to be fun while it lasts, but it's going to come to an end, and it's going to be a bitter, soul-killing end. Mm-hmm. Like, you're all going to starve out here in the desert or something. Like, I just... Like I said, I was raised where his consequences were beat into my head. So like the idea that I can just, I'll just have his love baby out in the garden shed. I marvel at the hope springing eternal here.
It's really interesting, and I'm sure there's reasons for this that I'm not aware of. But in this opening scene with Sharon Stone, he talks about how the purpose of, it's not a sin to be gay, just the purpose of marriage is or have sex without marriage is a sin.
Yeah, masturbation's a sin.
The purpose of marriage is to have children.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny to me that they would make priests and nuns be celibate. It feels like maybe a baby would be a miracle for a nun, but that's not how it works.
I mean,
she's not married.
It's a sacrifice. It's a calling. It's a way to devote your life to God instead of your own desires. Mm-hmm. But they also have a scene of the abbess feeling like to pitch a lump in her breast. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
On the other side.
Huh?
On the other side this time.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
I didn't pay attention to what side it was. There's also Freddie, Gutierrez's lover, showering, and Gutierrez, like he's going down this relationship that's fine, except for he feels guilty about it because it's against his church's instruction. Staring down the hotel cash bar, which is one is a problem that's manufactured by an arbitrary spiritual law that like you take that away. Like if you could just hypnotize him and make him forget about the fact that gay priests can't get married, he'd be fine. He'd just be courting his lover, and it's all sweet and but the alcoholism is an actual real disease and problem that's going to cause him a lot of pain if he doesn't master that. And
once he uncorks that, I mean, he got clean after his last visit to New York.
Sure.
So
did he actually go into drinking? Because I couldn't remember whether he gave in or whether he came very close.
Well, that's how he met Freddie. He was frequenting the liquor store that Freddie worked at.
Right.
Yeah, scary. So I'm hoping that's him, I don't know, showing some kind of resolve, because it doesn't seem like JP3 really helped him that much with his confession about God satisfies my spirit, Freddie satisfies my body.
Yeah, neither of them seemed like they got much out of that confession.
Yeah, so who knows what he's going to say about what liquor will satisfy.
Right. But this starts the young Pope, Pius XIII, sighing, and the nuns kind of hear that, and it's rumored about, and they get a radio that sets up this parabolic antenna aimed at his window, where they can hear his breathing, and they broadcast it 24/7. And they determined that at 415 breaths, he lets out a sigh. And then the second sigh came at 414 breaths. And there's an expectation for him to do the same at 413.
And he did.
And the crowd cheers. But people are wondering, what does this mean? And I'm wondering, is Lenny just fucking with people? Like, is he faking a coma? Because I almost believe he's got the self-discipline to do that.
But you can't do that when your heart's been replaced 3 times. There's not
fuck you can.
There's not enough faking in the world.
Why?
Because the heart itself is failing. The heart transplants aren't taking, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I guess that's the true. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's true.
Isn't there a way to make people wake up from comas too? I think there's.
But if he's faking it, if he's just faking unconsciousness, if he's conscious this whole time, and just like as the nun is cleaning his balls, as they're prepping him for surgery, as he's waking up from surgery, he just pretends to be asleep this entire time.
I also think there's CAT scans and things you can do to read the brainwave patterns.
There you go. That's yeah. Like if Dr. Proctor Kai is worth the salt, they could stick him in an MRI or hook up one of those EKGs.
Yeah.
Or is that the heart one?
There's
one where they put a net on your head and they can measure the electrical impulses. So yeah, you're probably right about that.
I don't.
So then we're talking about a genuine miracle.
We're talking about him being the real deal.
Yeah.
The one that can make Esther pregnant. He's actually a saint.
Yeah, but like this is the thing I thought was amazing about the young Pope is it stayed firmly. I think my recollection is it stays firmly in the leftover sphere of like. Are these genuine miracles? Are these genuine superpowers, spiritual superpowers, or are these just coincidences? Like, did you have a woman who everyone thought was barren and her husband was infertile, and it's just one of those 1 in a million shots, and it happened to coincide with Lenny praying for them?
I mean, even if he wakes up, I wouldn't say it's a legitimate miracle. If he came back from the dead, yes.
Huh.
If he wakes up, I would say that's within the realm of possibility.
If he breathes at 412, 411, and all the way to a countdown to snapping on his eyes, that's something. That's not. I don't know that medical science can explain that. Like that is a repeated sequence of events that seems very implausible. If it went from that, like if it was just like he sighed and then opened his eyes, then okay, well he sighed and opened his eyes. But this seems very deliberate. This is this weird papal countdown to consciousness.
Can we talk about you want to talk about some breath math?
Yeah, do your breath math.
So I timed myself breathing at about the same rate. And I
was there in the room and I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
It took about 30 seconds to take 10 breaths.
Uh-huh. So you're talking 20 breaths a minute.
20 breaths a minute. And if we do the math on 415 breaths, mm-hmm. divided by the 20 mm-hmm. in a minute, that's about 20 minutes in between each of these 415, 414, mm-hmm. 413. You did the math on how long that would take for him to wake up or be sighing continuously on every breath. What was that, like 5 days? Yeah,
it was something like, so you get like 8,000 breath cycles, but then you're going to be decreasing that. So I did a little bit of math and I came up with, I think it ended up being just over 5.25 days. Where if he takes one less breath in between sighs, he will eventually get to 0 sighs. And then I don't know if he just, it turns
That's
into,
what I'm hoping.
It turns into a 1-900 Pope number.
Is that still a miracle?
Yeah, if he's just heavy breathing now. something's going to happen. If this is like an Independence Day style countdown, and now the Vatican gets exploded.
I like that they also have some of his breathing contrasted against the terrorist on TV just breathing.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And then Bauer's watching that, seeming troubled at the end. Do you think that means that there's going to be another terror attack that we open next episode with? I think so.
It seems like everything is accelerating. So yes, I would predict maybe not next episode, but the episode after that, I think you're going to see more and more of these terror attacks, because we've essentially had one every 2 episodes, and if things are accelerating, then yeah, they'll get faster, because that's what acceleration literally means.
And also, this was your whole thing, but seems like we're gonna have an anti-pope situation.
Yeah, like if he does at the end of this countdown, whether it's 5 days or it's a week, whether it's a month, at the end of this, if he wakes up, he didn't step down. And he wasn't dead, so he's still the Pope. And we already see there's a plaza full of these hooded idolaters that are going to hold him up and proclaim him as Pope. And what does that do to the new Pope?
Yeah. Has there ever been
I don't know.
Has there ever been a case of them just like co-poping?
I don't know. There's been co-popery. It doesn't seem like that's. Jesus built his church on the rock mass that was Peter, not Peter and Paul or Peter and John or anything. It was a singular individual, and I know Catholics have a great deal of pride that's an unbroken line of succession back to the Apostle Peter. So
I wonder if John Paul III could step down, just take like a half step down and become a trusted advisor and let Lenny be the Pope again. I
think that's probably one way to do it, for him to like resume being a cardinal. But I don't know, because also, what would Lenny think about that? Lenny, has his own strong thoughts about stuff.
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah, but Sophia warns everyone, and this is, she's saying what we're all thinking, that like, you thought the idolatry was bad before. Holy shit. And she's like, please do this interview with this Times person. He's like, not yet. I need to keep waiting for many more breaths. We see him playing the harp in an empty room, and a dog runs past. And yeah, like, is this going to be the kangaroo of season 2? And then the actual kangaroo of season 2, the millipede, starts crawling around on Pius XIII's hands, and the nuns seem to see it and are disturbed by it. Yeah. Now, I don't know if maybe he stuck out his tongue like Einstein portrait style, and that's what excited/horrified them. But it seems like they could see the quote-unquote presence of God, whatever this millipede's supposed to represent.
Yeah.
That's Adam's take on it. It's God.
So I wanna go back to the scene where the millipede slithered out of JP3's box.
Okay.
Did that happen? Or was that
I don't think that millipedes actually crawled into the old people's ears. I don't think a stray wild dog literally ran. Although he did bring one. Okay, the dog might be real, because he did bring one of his dogs to the Vatican.
He did, yeah. Okay,
I just now realized that.
Yeah, the Daphne or whatever her name was.
Yeah, so the dog's real.
Dog's real.
I thought the millipedes were a strict symbol, but
I thought every sighting of a millipede was real.
Here's
with the exception
idea.
of it coming out of the box.
Here's an idea. What if what they saw on his hands was a stigmata? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
But that's like where you have a bloody wound that spontaneously appears on someone's palms to represent, something divine happening to them.
Who had the stigmata?
I'm saying, like, what if, because we just see what actually happens is the nuns looked at his hands and had this kind of horrified / amazed, excited look on their face. And, the one nun ran to the other nun nurse, and they both came and looked at it. And what the camera saw was a millipede. What the millipede represents is God, and it's kind of an infamous thing for saints to have stigmata spontaneously appear. The wounds of Christ appear on their body. So, like, I'm suggesting that, like, maybe what actually happened is his palms are bleeding, and that's what the nun is freaking out about, and it symbolized just like those people that were dead in Lourdes didn't have bullet holes or shrapnel in them. They were just kind of like, this is like a sanitized version, and next week we'll see that there is a stigmata. But that's just me taking a wild ass guess at what that could mean, because otherwise the millipedes are real and the nuns are seeing them.
Right. The millipede, was that the only thing in the box, and it escaped and went all the way to Lenny's hand?
Sure.
I mean, that's
it took the 4 or 5 hour train from Rome to Venice. And
Possible.
I just see this millipede with his little hat on.
Hopped in Esther's bag, and
he's carrying like 50 briefcases in his hand. Yeah,
he's
traveling.
got one of those hobo sticks.
Yeah, but he's have to have a bunch of like just keeping him in shoes. Traveling is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my guess is that you're supposed to understand that these are stigmata or some other holy sign, and that the nuns aren't actually seeing millipedes crawling on him. But
all
I could be wrong.
Guesses.
That's all I've got to talk. Oh, there's also the final nun scene where now the nuns are doing their dirty dancing at night, but they're joined by the headlight wearing friars.
Yeah.
And Sister Lizette has a really cute episode of voguing where she's, bopping and moving, and she holds up her power nun fist, and then she blows a kiss at the camera and then pirouettes away. It's really sweet and cute. I have no idea what it means. But I don't know.
This definitely didn't happen.
This definitely is not literally happening. I don't think the abbess would have it.
Nope.
So that's what we've got for the new pope. We will have a new pope for the new episode next weekend. Mm-hmm. Until then, I'm A.Ron.
I'm Cecily.
And listen to Jim. Can you hear him breathing? See you next week.
New pope, who dis?